Hello there. Um, as you can see, I've because some wonderful person I'm married to, my wonderful wife, has showed me how to put a video part. I know you do it in her class, so I've edited this here, so now I can actually.
I'm the wonderful wife. I'm the wonderful wife.
Yes, she is, and she's making sausage and peppers for me right now, so I get to smell them while doing this. So if you see, my mouth watering, you'll know why. All right, well, that's enough fun. Now we're going to go into kind of a depressing section. We're continuing to cover World War II, and today will be section 3, the Holocaust. The Holocaust was, let me just set myself up here. The Holocaust, of course, is a very depressing thing to teach and to even talk about, but we have to cover it. It's an important period. Last Wednesday, I should say this past Wednesday, was Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's a memorial celebrated. I don't celebrate, is not the right word, but memorial um, commemorating, yeah, around the world the Holocaust. In Israel, they actually have a minute of silence where a siren goes off all around the country in different cities, and everyone just stands. They park, they stop their cars, they get out of their cars, and everyone just stands. If you ever Google this, um, Holocaust remembrance in Israel, and it's actually very moving to watch them. And I just saw it the other day on the news, and of course in Israel, because of the current COVID-19 thing, they all have masks on, but they all got out and they just stand there, and it really it's very moving to watch that. So the reason they do this is what we're going to cover today. All right, so let's get started. My computer runs a little bit slow, so if you see a pause there, it's because I got that little blue circle comes on. Anyway, we call it the Holocaust, but in Israel, the Hebrew word they use is Shoah. Shoah is a word that means disaster. So if you ever see anything on the Holocaust and they say the word Shoah, you know it's the same thing. It's just they use the Hebrew word instead of Holocaust. Now, the Holocaust is a name applied to the government-run persecution and genocide. Now, we're familiar with the word genocide, which is the killing of an entire race. So genocide of various ethnic, religious, and political groups by Nazi Germany. And their biggest target were the Jews. Now, the Nazis come to power. We've already discussed this in January of 1933. Hitler is invited to become the Chancellor of Germany. And immediately, the persecutions begin. And April 1st, within 2 months, within 2 months of the Nazis coming to power, there's a boycott of Jewish stores. It was actually ignored by many Germans. There was a lot of anti-Semitism. We'll talk about that a little bit in Germany. But people, as I've said this before, people are anti-Semitic. They hate groups, but they like people within the group. Like they may say, well, I hate Jews, but Moses the butcher, yeah, he's a good guy. Sarah, she's down the baker, I love her, she's great. My daughter's teacher, wonderful person. They hate a group, but they seem to like individuals. So many people continue to shop in these stores. But as we see here, there were members of the SA, the brown shirts, who started putting signs up on Jewish store windows. It's hard to read there, but it basically says Deutsche. Deutsche means Germans. Wehr auch, which, defend yourself. And kauft nicht bei Juden, don't buy from Jews. Juden is the German word for Jews. I had to put our Three Stooges on here, actually Three Stooges and our wannabe stooge. I still find this picture so comical, as if these people would be threatening to anyone, but they were. Now, the Nazis started with legal discrimination against the Jews. They started passing anti-Semitic laws, and if you're unfamiliar with the word anti-Semitic, it means anti-Jewish, hatred of Jews. So anything that's anti-Semitic goes against Jews. Now, they passed them in the city of Nuremberg. Nuremberg is the cultural center of Germany. They have their big rallies there. My nose is itching. Big rallies there. So they passed a number of laws, and these laws took away basic civil rights from the Jews. The idea, the purpose was to make the Jews look different, to dehumanize them, to make them look like they're different from the Germans. The goal here was to ultimately get the Germans not to like Moses, their butcher, or Sarah, their children's teacher, enough where they would actually stand by and allow the Nazis to ship them out or ultimately kill them. So the idea was to dehumanize them. The laws were passed. They said that Jews couldn't be teachers, lawyers, doctors, college professors, judges in courts. They stripped Jews of German citizenship. Their passports had a big J for Juden. Even quarter and half Jews. I mean, this was something that many Germans didn't even know, that they had a Jewish grandmother, and that made them Jewish. It prevented marriage between Jews and non-Jews. If you were not a German, you could not marry a Jewish woman or Jewish man. If you were already married, they didn't force divorces. They just recommended them. Jews had to wear the Star of David on their clothing. This basically was to segregate the Jews from the rest of society. Now, the Nazis set up concentration camps for what they called undesirables. The first one was built in Dachau. Dachau is a small little town just north of Munich. They're run by the SS. These were the former members of the SA, the brown shirts, who became an elite unit. They originally were Hitler's bodyguards. They would actually have military units. And of course, they also had one branch of them which ran the concentration camps. And they were known as the SS. And they wore these black uniforms. Now, the concentration camps were used for the imprisonment of Jews, but also priests, ministers, nuns. A lot of religious people were speaking out against the Nazis. They actually even passed a law they called the pulpit law, which made it illegal for any priest or minister to speak out against the Nazi government. They went after homosexuals, and there was even ordinary criminals. I mean, people think that just because the Nazis were in charge, and even when the war breaks out, there's still crime goes on. People stealing cars, breaking into homes, writing bad checks, So they were ordinary criminals. And basically the reason why they had to open up Dachau was because they had filled up their jails, arresting communists and other people. So they started putting them in these outdoor prisons. The prisoners were brutally treated. There was torture, random murder. And we're getting the pause here again. So it was, and here we see that this is Dachau. This was the main gate, still there today. I visited here back in 1989. This was photographed right in 1945. Those people you see by the gate are actually American soldiers. And you'll see, here's the gate to get into the camp. And on the gate, you see the phrase, Arbeit macht frei. This was written on all their concentration camps. It's a phrase in German that means work will set you free. Obviously it didn't, but that was on there. The idea, if you work hard, you behave yourself, they'll let you go. Here's a picture of Dachau taken during the war. They have wooden camps, wooden barracks. They were surrounded by barbed wire, electrified fencing, and you can see these guard towers. The prisoners would wear striped uniforms, and on them they would have a triangle. The color of the triangle would indicate what your crime was. If it was like red, you were a communist. If it was brown, you were an ordinary criminal. If it was pink, you were homosexual. And if it was yellow, you were Jewish. And a lot of times they would take the two triangles and put one above the other to make a Star of David, as you can see in this gentleman here in the center. This was a picture I took when I visited Dachau. You can see the guard towers, and off to the right there is a part of the administration complex, where the person would come in, they'd be registered and so on. And there's a lot of memorials here. You'll see that later on. Here are some of the pictures. Now, it's hard to tell in this thing here. I'll see if I can point this out for you. This gentleman right here is Eli Wiesel. He was a prisoner. This is when Dachau was liberated by the Americans, and he was a prisoner there. He would go on to write the famous book Night. So if you ever read the book, there he is. All right, these were the crematorial ovens. They would have these right next to, to cremate the bodies, and then they would dump the ashes into large pits. This was a memorial in Dachau. It kind of represents the prisoners tangled up in barbed wire, just showing the desperation, I guess. This was erected to memorialize those who died in Dachau. All right. I got the blue circle. Yep, here we go. By 1939, 6 large concentration camps had been established. We know Dachau was the first, but in 1936, they opened up Sachsenhausen. My wife and I visited here about 10 years ago. That's the main entrance gate. And again, there's the phrase Arbeit macht frei. These were the wooden barracks that the prisoners would be forced to live in. And here we see them, it would be like triple bunk beds. Now it looks, I know a lot of people see this picture and it looks like there's ghosts there, but that's actually not. Those are actually the people reflected in a plexiglass they put in front of here so you can't walk back. And this is a memorial. I visited Sachsenhausen a few days after they had a memorial service here. That's why you see all the flowers and wreaths there. This is a memorial to those that died there. Buchenwald, another one of the really bad camps. This is a photograph of the American Army liberating the Buchenwald camp. Flossenburg opened up in 1937. Mauthausen, this was opened up in Austria in 1938 after the Anschluss, it became part of Greater Germany, so they did things here too. One of the interesting things, this is a modern picture, it's a memorial there too. You notice right up above the main door, there's kind of like a missing gap there. And you see in this older picture that missing gap held once the Nazi eagle and swastika. Obviously that's been removed. Here's Heinrich Himmler there in the center. He was the head of the SS, so it was his job to run the concentration camps. This was a picture taken at the end of the war. These people were being liberated, and that's an American soldier there to the left when the Americans moved into Austria and liberated Mauthausen. 1939, Ravensbrück. This is an all-female concentration camp. You can see they had a memorial service here. There's an Israeli flag and flowers planted in the crematorium. And Bergen-Belsen. Bergen-Belsen was opened in 1940. Nothing's left there. The British who liberated the camp had to burn everything down. My phone keeps chiming here on me. Because there had been typhoid and, as you know from anatomy and physiology class, the typhoid, what do you call those, germs? Yeah. Germs get into the wood being very porous. So they had to just burn everything because that was the only way they can guarantee that it wouldn't have another outbreak of typhus. Unfortunately, the bodies were lying everywhere, and the British could only just bury them in large mass graves. That's right behind this memorial. So there's thousands of people buried back there. Among them is the one of the most famous victims of the Holocaust, Anne Frank. You'll notice that also one of the interesting things here, you see a lot of stones on the memorial. This is something that Jews do when they go to cemeteries. We leave flowers. When Jews go to cemeteries, they put little stones on the tombstone. So you can see there's stones up and around this memorial. Now, Kristallnacht is a very important period in the Holocaust. In German, it means crystal night, but in English, we refer to the night of the broken glass. It got called Crystal Night because of all the broken storefront windows, and when they were shimmering in the moonlight, it kind of has this look of crystals. But that doesn't translate well into English, so we refer to it as the night of the broken glass. The night of November 9th, 1938, Nazis destroyed Jewish stores and synagogues throughout Germany and Austria. It was organized by the government, and it was carried out by the SA, the brown shirts, with the help of the SS and police. Very few actual German citizens participated. 1,668 synagogues throughout Germany and Austria were damaged or destroyed. Here we see pictures. This was the German city of Sidon. The fire department was there, and they were ordered not to put the fires out unless they threatened the homes of or property of Germans. And of course, by the next morning, almost every synagogue in Germany and Austria was gutted out and destroyed. Storefronts of more than 7,000 Jewish stores were smashed, and the stores were vandalized. We see some pictures here. Now, Kristallnacht is important because it's a transition point. It's going to start a new phase in the anti-Semitic activities of the Nazi Party. They started out, as we've been talking about, the Nuremberg laws, legal restrictions, but now we've moved it to just outright open violence. Now I'm going to talk about ghettos. Ghettos were something that I've gone back to like the Middle Ages. The first ghetto was actually in Rome. It was put together by one of the popes, not sure, might have been Leo X. And it was areas that were kind of segregated off in Rome where the Jews were forced to live at night. They could move around the city during the day, but at nighttime they had to stay in these ghettos. Well, the Nazis created ghettos to confine the Jews. These were walled off areas of cities that were in Poland and Russia that were created that they can put the Jews in there, basically to keep them there until they could figure out what they were going to do with them. All right? And they become immensely crowded prisons. They were not allowed to leave during the day. They had to live and stay in there at nighttime. There wasn't as much food, so it became very, very terrible, crowded conditions. They say they averaged like 9 people to a room. Now, the Warsaw Ghetto, Warsaw, the capital of Poland, was the largest. It had 380,000 people. That's like the population of Newark, living in an area that was twice the size of Hoboken. So you can just picture how crowded that would have been. From 1940 to 1942, diseases, especially typhoid and starvation, killed thousands of Jews confined in the ghetto. As you can imagine, there's no way for them to get out, so if a disease very easily spreads. Now, these are some photographs. This is the wall that was built around the Warsaw Ghetto. On the left-hand side, I'm sorry, wait a minute, this way, I'm in reverse. The left-hand side, you see here, okay, there we go. The left-hand side is the Polish section, and the right-hand side, I'm in reverse here. The right-hand side, I'll get this down, is the Jewish section. And they put walls right over all the streets. Now the ghetto was actually separated into two, the small ghetto and the large ghetto, and they had a main streetcar running down the center. So they built a bridge so the Jews could actually walk up and over the bridge. The people here seeing the center are Polish citizens, non-Jews, traveling back and forth. The man in the center there was actually the Jewish police. They were called kapos. Their job was to run the ghettos for the SS. They did all the dirty work. Then there's the children. I love this picture here. It's very sad to see the children, but that boy in the center with a smile, he shows up in a lot of pictures here. He must be a very happy guy. Here's some more pictures of the children. There's our guy again. No one knows who he was or what happened to him. It's assumed that when the ghetto was liquidated that he died along with all the other inhabitants. But which makes it even more tragic and sad to look at him and knowing what will happen. This is a part of the ghetto wall that still exists today. Most of the ghetto wall, of course, was destroyed during the war or torn down afterwards. Or actually, so they actually found some parts and they're still there. And you can see there's like a little brass plaque on the wall. Just wait a minute. Now, I just want to mention this one incident because it's really important. This was known as the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. In 1943, Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto fought back against the Germans. The Germans were looking to liquidate the ghetto, and they were transporting people out of the ghetto to Treblinka concentration camp, where they would die that day. But a couple thousand Jews fought back, 1,200 of them actually, Jewish partisans fought back against the Nazis for about 4 weeks. They shot at them. They had smuggled in pistols and small rifles, and they had these Molotov cocktails, which are basically bottles full of gasoline, plugged with a rag, and they would light the rag on fire and throw it. So when the glass breaks and the gasoline spills out, the lighted rag would hit the gasoline and burst everything into flame. So these were the very crude and small weapons they did, but they fought against the SS for 4 weeks. Here we see these are some of the top SS men. A couple of the men here who were in charge of the Warsaw Ghetto were hanged after the war as war criminals. The Nazis came in and just started burning buildings down, and the Jews would shoot at them from sewers and cellars and windows, and they did the best they could, but ultimately the SS will defeat the Jewish defenders, and those that are not killed will be shipped off to the camp. But the Jews did kill 300 of the German soldiers. So this was a really good, important point where you see the Jews. In fact, here we see some pictures. This was actually probably one of the most famous pictures of the Holocaust, showing some of the Jews that were captured in a building. It was actually a hotel originally, being arrested. We don't know who that boy was there. It's they've always tried to figure it out who it was, but you can just see the terror in their faces. They're being led up by machine guns, pointed at them. Here are some other the partisans who fought back. They fought from cellars. They fought from basements. And ultimately, they'd be led out to, put them on trains to Treblinka camp. Now, after the war, the Jews erected a memorial to the Warsaw Ghetto fighters. This is in Warsaw. Now, after the Germans invade Russia in 1942, the mass murder, 41, the mass murder of the Jews will begin. See, Germany didn't have many Jews. It was like 65,000 Jews, so they could ship them off to camps and so on. But in Poland and Russia, there's 3 million Jews that will come under their control, and they're going to just go for some brutal ways of trying to kill as many Jews as they could. So in 1941, after the invasion of the Soviet Union, they had these large SS death squads. They were called Einsatzgruppen. There were 5 of them. And they followed the army into Russia. And their purpose was to round up Jews in Russian cities and just simply murder them. They would shoot the Jews in large groups and then bury them in mass graves. One probably very famous incident was in the Russian city of Kiev. The Germans captured it in September of 1941, and then 9 days later, an Einsatzgruppen moved in. They rounded up all the Jews in the city, and they brought them to a ravine outside the city, kind of an isolated area called Babi Yar. There they had dug large ditches. They ordered the Jews to lie down in the large ditches, and they were just shot by men with machine guns. In 2 days, the SS managed to kill 33,771 Jews. Unbelievable. Now, the Nazis were not satisfied with shooting as a method of mass murder. It was too inefficient, and it was taking a psychological strain, not on the victims, of course, but on the actual shooters. They noticed there was actually an increase in suicides among the SS men in these Einsatzgruppen. I mean, you imagine shooting children had to psychologically, on some of them, cause problems. So they had to come up with a better way, more efficient way to exterminate the Jews. And that's what we're going to lead into next. This will be known as the final solution. In January of 1942, the Nazis organized what is called the Final Solution. It was organized by two SS generals, Reinhard Heydrich, who was assassinated during the war, and Adolf Eichmann. He was his assistant. He managed to escape, but after the war, the Jewish secret police found him, kidnapped him, and brought him back to Israel, where he was put on trial and eventually executed. Anyway, the final solution of what they call the Jewish question, and Lösung der Judefrage, the final thing of what we're going to do. It was the Nazi plan to kill the entire Jewish population of Europe, who they considered subhuman, what the Germans called Untermenschen. Now, in Poland, the Germans built 6 extermination camps. These were called death camps for the mass murder of the Jews of Europe. They were different from the concentration camps in Germany like Dachau, which were mainly there as prisons to keep the prisoners there. The purpose of the death camps was just to kill. Basically, it was like a factory to kill. They were run by the SS guards. You see some of them here. They had these hats with like little skull and crossbones. They were known as the death head formations. The Jews would be transported by trains and closed boxcars. You can actually see one of these in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. They let you walk through it. It's very chilling when you get into one of these boxcars. They would just cram all the people in it, shut the doors, and they would spend 2-3 days in these boxcars without food or water. The victims were primarily killed by gassing in gas chambers. Here we see a picture of one of them, and they used a chemical called Zyklon B. The gas chambers were disguised as showers, so the victims would not struggle. They would just walk in thinking it was just a shower. It was insidious the way they would actually try to trick them. They would tell them to tie their shoelaces together so they don't lose any shoes. They would say, remember the numbered peg you're going to put your clothes on so you can get your clothes back. They knew they weren't coming back. They knew they were going to die in this chamber, but they told them this anyway, just so they would be fooled and not fight back. Afterwards, the bodies would be brought to another room by Jews it was their job to bring the Jews from the gas chamber into the next room, which was the crematorium. They had these large ovens where they would just cremate the bodies, and it went on all day and all night. Now, they set up 6 major camps, 2 of them being Treblinka and Auschwitz. Treblinka was created to kill the Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto. The camps were run like factories. There was transportation schedules, living space, need for slave labor. Now, Auschwitz was the largest death camp the Nazis built. Its technical official name was Auschwitz-Birkenau, but we basically refer to it as Auschwitz. It opened in May of 1940, and it expanded, grew to years. Here we see a photograph. They had one train line that would go in, and then it would, inside when you go through the gates, they would unload the passengers. Here we see some of the electrified fencing. This would be the car truck entrance. Again, you see the sign Arbeit macht frei. 8,000 prisoners arrived daily. Usually they would be divided into 2 groups. You see the men there on the right. That was the left group. They would be kept there for slave labor to work. Women, children under the age of 14 or younger, babies, elderly people. That was the right group, and they would usually be led right to the gas chambers. All right, let me get back in here. We had a Zoom call with the faculty, so I had to jump out. So I'm back again. We'll pick up where we left off here. All right. We're talking about Auschwitz, the largest of the death camps the Nazis built. The official name, Auschwitz-Birkenau, opened in May of 1940, expanded through the years. 8,000 prisoners arrived every day. All right, you can see here, we have a photograph. This was the selection process. Those on the left-hand side of the picture, women, elderly, children 14 or under would be taken immediately to the gas chambers, while the people on the right, mostly adult men, but there's also women in there. These people would be kept, they would use them for slave labor. There were a number of factories around the camp that they would send them out to. So here are some people. I remember reading, I think these were from Hungary. Right toward the end of the war, they were bringing a lot of Hungarian Jews down. And they were being sent right, you can see them, they just got off the train in the background, and they'd be sent right to the gas chambers. The same thing happened with these two boys. Now, this photograph here, these are all young children. They all survived the war. This is actually a Russian film made by the Russians after they liberated Auschwitz. So it was actually a film clip. But the thing is they show all these children rolling their sleeves up. You really can't make it out in the photograph, but what they were showing was their tattoos. The Nazis would, those they didn't kill right away, they would tattoo them so they could easily be identified. And I remember meeting a woman, back when I was in college, and she still, the tattoos are there for the rest of your life, and she was showing us the number that had been tattooed on her arm. So that's what these children are doing, they're showing the tattoo. But the good part is all these children did survive. Now, the gas chambers and the crematoria were capable of killing 6,000 a day. So every day they would always have an extra 2,000. And, living conditions were brutal. Many of those not killed in the gas chambers died of starvation, forced labor, diseases. There were individual executions and the brutal medical experiments. At least 1.1 million prisoners died at Auschwitz. About 90% of them were Jewish. Auschwitz has become a primary symbol of the Holocaust. This is a modern picture. It is a memorial you can visit today. I've never been there, but someone I know went there and took these pictures and gave them to me. This was the auto entrance. You can see the Arbeit macht frei signed there. It's estimated that up to 12 million people died in the Nazi camps, of which 6 million were Jews. There were others: Jehovah's Witnesses, communists, gypsies, homosexuals, Catholic Protestant clergy, Slavs, and the mentally and physically disabled, along with a number of other groups. Now, as American and British, French, and Russian troops closed in on Germany, they began finding and liberating the concentration and death camps. And they were shocked by what they found. The Nazis saved everything they took from the Jewish prisoners. They forced prisoners to work in the collection and disposal of corpses. Gold teeth were extracted from the bodies. Women's hair was shaved off before they were sent to the gas chambers, recycled for their use as rugs. They found piles of shoes, piles of eyeglasses. This is particularly disturbing. An American soldier, boxes full of wedding rings. Now we have the survivors. These were actually Italian Jews that were arrested and being sent to a camp, and they were rescued by the Americans, so they survived. Then there were the victims. Here we see Dwight Englewood. He was in the other picture too. Dwight Englewood here. He was shocked by it, and he ordered everything to be filmed and photographed. He didn't want to. He wanted to make sure that no one would ever say this didn't happen. There was also a memorial to the American liberators that was built down in Liberty State Park in Jersey City. It shows a statue of an American soldier carrying one of the survivors from the concentration camp. And then I want to talk about the rescuers. Many people risked their lives to save Jews during the war. They hid them in their homes. They did whatever they can to help them escape. And the Israeli government set up an award for these people. And they started in 1963, and the award is referred to as the Righteous Among the Nations. These were people that were non-Jews that risked their lives to save the lives of Jews. What they would plant a tree for them in a garden in Jerusalem. And here we see the garden, and they will also give you a medal. And this would be awarded to anyone who did anything to help the Jews. People like Oskar Schindler from Schindler's List is one of the recipients. So they wanted to recognize anyone who risked their life to save Jews. The entire country of Denmark received the award. There's one award for the entire country, because throughout the award, Denmark and Norway, the resistance movement in Norway, did everything they could to save Jews by sneaking them out of their country over to Sweden. Now, the last thing I just want to mention was probably the most famous victim of the Holocaust was Anne Frank. She died at the age of 15. She was born in Germany. Her family fled to the Netherlands when the Nazis came to power. But in 1940, when Germany took over the Netherlands, her and her family were forced to go into hiding in Amsterdam. They hid for over 2 years in the back of a warehouse. Eventually, they were discovered right in the summer of 1944, just as the war was coming to an end, and they were all sent to concentration camps. There were her and her sister, her mother and father, and there were another family of 3 and an 8th person. They were all arrested. They were all sent to concentration camps, Auschwitz in the beginning, and then they got moved around. And eventually, all but their father, Otto Frank, died in the Holocaust. Otto Frank did return to the house in Amsterdam. Here we see it. It's right in the center. See if I can show you. This is right here. This is using there we go. It's that house right there. They hid in the back. It was not easy to see. In fact, you had to go through a door that was hidden by a bookcase. You can go here today and visit the house, and you can actually walk through the doorway here. It's kind of sad, because you think that was, Anne Frank and all the other 7 members actually came through this when they had been arrested by the German Gestapo in Amsterdam. Like I said, the father came home. They discovered the diary, and he published it. This is the actual diary. It's in a museum that's right next to the house where they hid. Now, after the course, there was memorials were built to commemorate the millions that died. This is the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe. It's in Berlin. You can see they have like these granite sort of, I don't know what you want to, they look like tombstones, but there's no names on them. Here, this was in Dachau. I like this one. It's one of the themes that they people who memorialize the Holocaust say is never again. And it's written here in Hebrew and other languages, German, English, never again. Never should this happen again. All right, that concludes the section on the Holocaust. It's not an easy one to do, and it is, kind of depressing. Anyway, all right. Hope you have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you next week. I think we do have a Zoom call later today, but then I'll talk to you. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. All right, bye-bye.